I always say that every single Sabbath is a special because it is special because God has made it so right from the beginning. And despite, the gloomy weather outside, today is a special day. And God always have for us blessings that he has prepared for each and every one of us. Well, as you know, today is my official last day with you here at Ladywood. Because then from the 1st of February, I will then be taking a new district, as you, I hope, are aware. And so before I say anything else, I must say one thing. I must say, if I have failed you in any way during my term here, please forgive me. I want to make sure that we all together see one another in heaven. And so, in whatever way I have failed you, please forgive me. But I must also thank you. I want to thank you for your love that you have shown me during these almost 3 years that I have been with you. And I am pleading and I'm asking you that you show greater love to Pastor Isaac Liebert, that he will come up. I want to thank you for your long suffering with me. And I pray that you show more long suffering to Pastor Isaac as he takes over. And I want to thank you for your kindness. And I ask you that you show greater kindness to Pastor Isaac. I want to thank you for your goodness towards me. And I want to ask you that you show greater goodness to Pastor Isaac. And I want to thank you for your prayers, because it meant and it means so much. And I'm kindly asking you that you pray more for Pastor Isaac Liebert as he takes over. Brethren, let us not forget the reason why God has placed us here. We have a mission and we have a purpose. And that is that we should spread the good news where God has placed us. So as Pastor Isaac Liebert takes over, I beg you and I kindly ask you, let us not forget why God has placed us here. Let us continue and let us go out to spread that good news that so many people are waiting to hear. And today, I would like to bring you and to leave with you a message of hope. And the message today is entitled, Do Not Fear. Of course, many of us, and in general as human beings, we are fearful of the unknown. Am I right? We as human beings want to know and calculate and have everything sorted out. And so when the unknown is before us, we tend to fear. And here we are, we stand in 2022. And the year is ahead of us and it is unknown. And naturally, we fear. And so today I want to take you and look at two biblical stories, one found in the Old Testament and one story found in the New Testament that teaches us not to fear, but to put our trust in God. So come with me, brothers and sisters, to the 2 Kings, chapter 6, beginning in verse 8. That's 2 Kings, chapter 6, verse 8. And it says, Now the king of Syria was making war against Israel. And he consulted with his servants, saying, My camp will be in such and such a place. And the men of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, Beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are coming down there. Then the king of Israel sent someone to the place of which the men of God had told him. Thus he warned him, and he was watching there, not just once or twice. Therefore, the heart of the king of Syria was greatly troubled by this thing, and he called his servants and said to them, will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? And one of his servants says, none, my lord or king. But Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. So he said, go and see where he is, that I may send and get him. And it was told him, saying, surely he is in Dothan. Therefore, he sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. And when the servant of men of God arose early in the morning and went out, there was an army surrounding the city with horses and chariots. And his servant said to him, alas, my master, what shall we do? And he answered, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Brothers and sisters, the king of Syria, on his mind is war. Let's go to war. And we know from our experience, war, it is not pleasant. War brings suffering. War brings destruction. War brings much, much grief. And so the king of Syria is going against the king of Israel. But his plans are not working out, because you see, there is a man of God, a prophet, who told the king of Israel everything that the king of Israel was planning to do. And so the king of Syria is frustrated. He is frustrated, and he calls his generals and he is asking them, listen, tell me, who is telling the king of Israel my plans? And the servants and their generals saying, no, none of us, my lord. You see, what you probably don't know is there is a man of God who, whatever you say, even in your bedroom, he knows and he tells the king. Now, what is interesting here, brethren, that please remember that even whatever you say and you think in your own bedroom, it is not hidden before God's eyes. So be careful, be mindful of the fact that before God, nothing is hidden. So the king of Syria is really frustrated. He is so frustrated that he sends a great army to catch Elisha. And of course, it's to catch him, not to have a talk with him, but to catch and dispose of him so he can then fulfill his evil plans. And so Elisha's servants wakes up in the morning. To his great horror, that there is this great army, horses, chariots, spears, and swords and all the rest, looking for the servant of God. But I am thinking, is the king of Syria daft? If the prophet knew what he was saying in his inner chambers, now, don't you think that the prophet would know that he would come for him? Come on, someone. And so, what is interesting here, brethren, that the prophet is able, or the prophet is not losing sleep, that this great army is coming against him. What are you losing sleep over? And so the servant is so afraid that he doesn't even know what to say, and all he says, my master, what shall we do? There is no hope for us. There is no escape for us. We are done. We are finished. Now, the prophet, he says, do not fear. I mean, uh, what silly words is he talking? I mean, there is this great army, and you telling me, do not fear? What is going on? What does he know that I don't know, that he is so at peace with this great? Now, brethren, I don't know if you ever had the experience when you have this big knock at your door, and the armed officers at the door with their guns pointed at your head, and then you're told, don't fear. I mean, you're fearful. I mean, you're freed, you can't even move. So of course it is natural that the servant is so fearful. But the servant of the Lord, the prophet says, do not fear. For those who are with us are more than are those who are against us. Brethren, you see, despite the impossible situation, God is still in control. He is still on the throne. He had a solution where there appeared no solution. How can you escape this great army? Where can you go? He didn't just surround the house, and then sometimes, well, they might have got it wrong, but they surrounded the entire city. There is nowhere to go. Do you understand? There is nowhere to run, but God can make a way where there seems to be no way. God has thousands of ways to deliver us from our worst fears. If our eyes are focused on the problem, brothers and sisters, fear will overcome us. But if our eyes are fixed upon Jesus, the emotions of fear may still be present, but it will not cripple us. Fear will no longer dominate our lives. The antidote of fear is the belief that God is with us. We were created to live by faith and not to be consumed by fear. Brothers and sisters, I know that over the past few years, the entire nation, the entire world has been grappled with fear. And many of us are so fearful. But God says to us, do not fear. Do not be consumed by fear, but live in faith. Brothers and sisters, I want to invite you to another story found in the New Testament. And this story takes place on the Sea of Galilee. And this story is found in the book of Matthew chapter 14. And I'm sure many of you know this story very well. And I want to touch on a few points and remind us about fear and what fear does to us. You see, what we need to understand, brothers and sisters, that the disciples have been battling the waves for 8 long hours on the Sea of Galilee. They were weary, they were tired, they were exhausted. And of course, I can only imagine that after all these 2 years of us battling with COVID and with all its variations, I am sure that many of us are weary, are tired, and exhausted. The disciples were nowhere near their destination. Their strength was gone. There are times in life when the battle is fierce, when the storms rage all around us, and we are so exhausted with the battle that we feel that we cannot fight any longer. And here is the incredible great news, brothers and sisters. Where is Jesus during all this time? Have you ever asked yourself, Where is Jesus all this time? What was he doing during their intense struggle? You could be asking ourselves today, where is Jesus when I am struggling? Where is Jesus when I am suffering? Jesus was praying for his disciples. He was asking the Father to increase their faith, to give them strength to face the storm, to give them the courage to go on. Hello, somebody. In the storms of life that we face daily, Jesus is preparing us for greater crises that will come upon us in the world and in the future. The disciples saw the storm. Jesus saw them. Their eyes were fixed upon the waves, but Jesus's eyes were fixed upon them. To the disciples, everything seems out of control, but Jesus was in control. Amid the storms of life, Jesus's eyes are upon us. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that amazing? Isn't that comforting to know that Jesus's eyes is upon you? Isn't that wonderful to know that Jesus's eyes is upon you? Isn't that wonderful that Jesus's eyes is upon you? Isn't that wonderful? When the thunder roars and the waves are high, Jesus is still mighty to save. In the darkness, he is the light of life. Verses 25 and 26 tells us that the disciples, in another word, were terrified by what they were seeing. The problem here is that the disciples feared what they did not know. And we are told in verse 25 and 26, and when the disciples saw Jesus walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost," and they cried out of fear. You see, they saw what they thought was a ghost. They were afraid of the unknown. And the unknown often creates fears in the heart of man and woman. And as a result, we no longer can rationalize things, and we begin the what if game. And what if questions must give way to the voice of Christ, who proclaims in the midst of the raging sea and the blowing winds, amid the overwhelming darkness, we told in verse 27, "Be of good cheer. It is I, do not be afraid." Jesus, brothers and sisters, is the answer to the overwhelming fears that consume our energy, that rob our joy and ruin our faith, or I should say our health. We must overcome fear by faith as we adjust our focus, believing that he loves us and he will never let us down, and he will never harm us in any way. Amid the raging storm, Peter calls out to Jesus and asks that he may come to him, we're told in verse 28. Dear brethren, remember this. Fear keeps us locked behind our doors. And we have seen so many fearful of their lives, and they did not step outside of their house for months and even years. Fear keeps us locked behind our doors, but faith leads us out of the boat. Faith leads us to walk on the stormy sea with Jesus. Faith helps us to face the winds and the rain with our eyes fixed upon the Master of the winds and the Lord of heaven and earth. Jesus replies to Peter's request with one simple word: come. Come outside of your own door. Come outside behind wherever you have locked yourself. Come. Jesus never says, stay away. Jesus never says, you deal with it. Jesus never says, that's your problem, not mine. Jesus never says, listen, stop troubling me, all right? I have greater problems to deal with. Jesus simply says, come. Amen. Jesus says, step out of the boat. Come by faith and walk on the water. Come, my arms are strong. You are not going to drown. You are not going to drown. And Peter accepted Jesus' invitation, threw himself into the jaw of death, and did not allow fear to overcome him. What are your greatest fears that are paralyzing you today, my beloved brothers and sisters? What do you worry most? Christ is greater than your fears. He is bigger than our doubts. He is larger than our questions. And he invites us to come on the stormy seas of life. When Peter kept his eyes fixed upon Jesus, we know he walked on water. But when his eyes were not fixed upon the master, but upon the troubles of life, he began to sink. But the only thing that could save him was not his skills of a fisherman, neither was his knowledge of the Sea of Galilee, where he was fishing there ever so often, neither his wisdom to solve problems, neither his ability to swim back to the boat. It was his cry to the Lord, Lord, save me. And Jesus immediately stretched out his hand and caught him, we're told in verse 31. You see, there is no other safer hands than in the hands of Jesus. Amen. Please notice what Jesus is not saying to Peter. He is not saying, where is your faith? Neither is Jesus saying, oh, Peter, you have no faith. Instead, he is saying, oh, you of little faith. You see, brothers and sisters, a little faith is better than no faith at all. When we have a little faith, we can face the life's raging storms. Because when we exercise our little faith in life's challenging situations, our little faith increases. Have you noticed that Peter had enough faith to get out of the boat, but not enough faith to get through the storm? Jesus often allows the storms of life to blow upon us in order to increase our faith. So, brothers and sisters, I don't know the challenges that you have went through this week. And many of us have laid to rest our loved ones. Many of us are going through illnesses and diseases and COVID and so much more. And we are asking ourselves, why me, Lord? Why I, Lord? I am a faithful servant. I grew up in the Adventist church. I'm a faithful tithe giver. I'm a faithful Sabbath keeper. I'm a faithful this and I am a faithful that. Why me, Lord? And we get discouraged in the life's troubles that fall upon us. But remember, but do not forget that Jesus allows all these things to come upon us so that our little faith may increase bit by bit, bit by bit. So don't complain, but say, Lord, increase my little faith. Lord, give me the strength to go through this. And Lord, I thank you that you have promised to be with me. If we would believe more, we would doubt less. Jesus is calling us to place our trust in him and in him alone. Amen. Thus placing our confidence into his ability to save. And brothers and sisters, there is nothing and no one more abler than Christ himself to save us. The Bible reminds us over and over again, irrespective what is ahead of us, irrespective of the unknown, the Bible reminds us, do not fear. There are 365 fear not expression throughout the Bible or similar expression. Did you know that? That is one fear not for every single day of the year. You wake up this morning and God says, do not fear, my brother and sister. You wake tomorrow and he says, do not fear, my sister. Do not fear, my daughter. Do not fear, my son. Every single day, despite your fears, God says to you, do not fear. How amazing is that? God has the entire calendar year covered for you. He invites us to rest in his love. Trust in his grace. Rejoice in his power. Fear not, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Whenever you forget this, the Bible reminds us in Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10. When we see suffering and disease all around us, we do not need to fear because Jesus is with us. In Isaiah 35, verse 4, we are told, say to those who are fearful hearted, be strong, do not fear. Behold, your God will come with a vengeance, with a recompense of God. He will come and save you. No matter the situation that you might be facing, do not forget, my beloved brother and sister, that Christ is with you. There is no need to fear. A better day is coming, and we shall see God face to face. Until then, continue to trust in him, and do not let fear overcome you, but overcome fear with faith. May we always, in the times of our trouble, always completely depend upon God. Amen.